So I thought it might be worth making the most of the opportunity of being stuck indoors, away from the studio and away from a model, to do something from life and maybe to work with hands. And I have, for those who might struggle to work with their own hands, I've attached some photographs of my hands to the email, and I've also attached a kind of handout on how to draw hands. So I'm going to do some demonstration drawings now of my left hand, and I'm going to use a biro because I think it's quite good fun just to cover a few pages with some sketches. So the first stage of this demonstration is just going to be remembering how to draw hands, reminding you of some of the stages, and then I'll go on to the idea behind the theme of perhaps having the hand hold something or be connected to something. So firstly, here's a hand. What should we do? Try that. Something like that. I think it's quite good to draw with a biro because you can then just draw loosely, quickly, and not worry about it too much. So I would start fairly faintly with the wrist. My wrist is going there, and there's a kind of line, the kind of crease on the inside of the wrist. And then I'm going to find the sort of main body of the hand, which is that sort of shape there. Then I'm going to outline the shape of the fingers, and my fingers are doing all sorts of exciting things, a bit like that. And then lastly, I'm going to deal with the thumb, which is over here on that big muscle and goes off out that way. So I hope you can see those, but those are some of the basic shapes to work with. I'll now make them a bit stronger because I've ended up with a narrow wrist. I think I need a much bigger wrist. But I think I might work in the way that I've just described, going firstly to find the wrist, and then getting the main body of the hand, and then it's the knuckle really. This crease along here is the inside of my knuckle. And by getting the wrist and the knuckle, I've got some direction to the hand, and I can go from the inner knuckle line to this outline that I've drawn for the fingers. So there's one finger there. This finger's very complicated. The fingers look like there might be, I might have underestimated those shapes. Then there's a real gap there, curious, between that finger and that finger. These fingers, that one's a bit shorter. So you can see that that outline that I started with was a rough guide, and actually the thumb probably isn't quite as long. The thumb might be over here. So that's taking those stages of wrist, knuckle, shape to the fingers, and doing the thumb last. Next, it would be good to model this hand a bit, and so I'll just do some diagonal hatching. The side of the thumb is definitely in shadow, so that's helpful. The inside of these fingers are also in shadow, and it might be worth getting into fingernails here, who would have thought? But might be worth putting on some fingernails, but also then looking with eyes half closed, the inside of these fingers, and maybe part of that finger there are in shadow. So, and these fingers are actually casting a bit of a shadow. So I'm just showing how I can gradually model. That should be over there a bit more. I can gradually model those forms, with the bigger forms of the thumb and the body of the hand, but also the smaller forms of the fingers. On the email I attached some photographs of, or one of Henry Moore's drawings of his own hands. And they're done with ink, built up with lots of little lines, a little bit, I suppose, Dürer-like. And they're worth looking at because he often uses sort of contour marks. So he'll go around, fingers are thin cylindrical forms. And if you put on some descriptive marks, modelling some of the contours, the direction of that these forms are going in, then that can also help. Another thing that's helpful, I'm perhaps not demonstrating this with my hand, but you sometimes find if you actually work with a negative shape, you know, for example here, if I put some darker contrast along there, or perhaps even between here, between the fingers, by putting in some of that often makes a difference. So, you know, going from what seems like a badly drawn hand to really making it work is sometimes just certain emphasis. And the emphasis can be in the background. Here, for example, I probably should get that a little bit more definite so that these bent fingers, I can distinguish between the tip of that finger. So yes, sometimes it's to do with tips of fingers or where the hand meets the table or whatever it is. So that's one view. Let's just try another. Let's try the hand like this, perhaps. That's still on the phone. Oh, and I just realised that my camera's facing the wrong way, so I'm going to stop and turn it. Okay, so sorry, the last slot would have been on its side. I should have checked that. Anyway, I'm going to do the hand this way now, maybe something like that. And I'll do it a bit smaller so I can fit it onto this spare bit of paper. So my wrist is coming down like this. I've got a watch, which is maybe shows you where the roundness of the wrist is. There's a side to the wrist there, I think. And if I was to go straight out, so from the wrist there, straight out to the knuckle here, that's the angle of the knuckle, I think. And the shape of the fingers, they're doing funny things. That's the kind of outline shape of the fingers, possibly too big for that back of the hand. And then the thumb, I think this pose illustrates this better because we're looking at the back of the hand, but the thumb is on that kind of triangular hinge. So I want to get that in first before I then get the curving out thumb, something like that. Now that's all out of proportion, I think. This bit of the hand should be much bigger, and so should the wrist. And maybe the fingers are too big, but anyway, I'll go back to that. Maybe get the watch because it's there. Come out here. So where was it? The knuckle should be there, shouldn't it, I think? It's a better knuckle. So going from the knuckle to the fingers. These fingers are bent. That finger disappears out of view. And this finger is very long and insistent. I think what I often tend to do is, once I start looking at the fingers, they get bigger, and this bit of the hand is too small. So you won't do that, because I've shown you what to avoid. So that's just repeating that advice of wrist, knuckle, finger shape. Then maybe some modelling. So as I look at my hand with my eyes half closed, all of this part of the back of the hand is in shadow. And that side of that finger, and this side of this finger, and this one here. Line there. What else can I do? Probably should start refining these fingers a little bit more. Maybe get a nail in here. So this is the first task that I'm suggesting you deal with. Again, some contour lines around that thumb might be helpful. And I think that maybe some bigger kind of curving lines here should get that ring. Could be significant. So this has been a reminder of how to draw hands. There is the handout which reminds you of those steps. And I'm making these extra points about negative shapes because I think, would it make a difference if I really darken that? Because you see, I'm not happy with this hand. It's not a good hand. And it's always good if the demonstration can illustrate a way of sort of redeeming a piece of work. So I'm just trying to sort of distinguish between the hand and the negative shape around it, because I think some of the extra emphasis in certain places can change a drawing. And the point being that I haven't particularly improved the hand, but just by filling in some of the area around it, I think I've made it a bit more convincing. It's brought out the light here, which has modelled that hand a bit more. My fingers aren't very good, so I would need to give them more attention. So that's a couple of reminders. I'm suggesting to start this project, you do a number of drawings of your hand. So try it from different angles and start to think about then, what about drawing it holding something? So I'm going to pause this and get a few things to hold and talk to you about them. So I thought I'd try this as an idea. Beautiful painted egg. I wanted to try something that's very fragile, and if I were to paint it, then that might be part of the mood, the intention of the composition. So I initially, I suppose, I want to find ways of how do I illustrate its fragility, and I don't know if my hand could crush it, but would that be something I was trying to convey? So I'm just talking you through some possibilities. So if I've got it like that, I would just start by, and I suggest you start just by drawing some of these possibilities. So there's the wrist, here's the inside of the knuckle, the fingers make that sort of a shape, and the thumb comes over here, and the egg is there. So again, I've done these sort of construction lines, and then I'll work a bit more strongly on them. There are other things to consider as well, I suppose. If I'm after a certain narrative, a certain mood, which in this case is to do with the fragility of the egg, then it might also help the way I light it. At the moment the sun seems to have gone in. It's going to rain, I think. So there's quite a nice dramatic light. This egg sitting between my fingers. There's a lot of shadow in these fingers. So I'm just really trying to articulate some of the things you might think about, not just drawing a good hand and having something in it, but going on to the idea of producing a painted composition that's got a real intention. And if my intention here is to do with the fragility of the egg, then there may be things to do with the lighting, the size of the hand, the treatment of the hand, what I put behind it, which will help with that. This hand doesn't work yet, and I wonder what would help. Shall I make the egg a bit stronger first? There's a lot of pattern on that egg. I haven't got time to watch me do that. The egg could be a bit stronger, then I need a few accents in this hand. Certain dark marks here and there which really make it start to work a bit better. So, one possibility, the egg. This is another possibility. I wanted something, something a bit sort of industrial. There we go. How about that? It's another possibility. There's my wrist here. That's where it's the inside of the knuckle, and then the fingers make that sort of a shape. Thumb goes off up here. And then we've got the tool, and it's hard metal. That's where things are. And so here I'd probably be trying to bring out a different quality. Maybe the hand is soft and fleshy against this piece of not industrial, but this piece of equipment. Fingers make a great shape. So that's another possibility that I'd be playing around with. So I've tried to choose, probably won't demonstrate anything else because I want to leave you free to come up with your own ideas. But if you take my point, I'm really trying to get you to think about what can you put in this hand that's going to give you a subject matter to work with, not just to get the hand right and believable, but to say something through your painting. I sent those illustrations of Henry Moore's amazing old hands, which were apparently, I think he said he was 81, so he did them sort of in response to, well, wanting to communicate something about age and aging. They are, the way that they're drawn with ink and lines perhaps emphasizes their age, and yeah, so that was that one. So I've got the hand holding things on the inside. I might have to think of other things. Can I do something clever with a cup on the back? Could be drawing the back of the hand. So lots of possibilities. I think I've probably introduced that well enough for you to get to the first stage of doing some drawings of hands, and then seeing what might make a composition. I don't think I need to demonstrate starting a painting, but what I would be encouraging you to do is not just to draw the hands and paint the hand only, but try and think about some sort of aim, mood, composition, that means you don't just consider the hand and what it's holding, but the setting, the lighting, all these other elements that we've probably been talking about a bit in relation to other paintings this session, the still life with its particular aim, the interior, and so on. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing some good hands at 12 o'clock tomorrow, and discussing with you over the week how you're going to go from your drawings to a painting. And probably it would be worth encouraging you to get a reasonable drawing and then to try and work from the drawing quite a lot, and occasionally look at your hand or the object for informing the painting, but try and do the painting from the drawing. Okay, see you soon. Bye bye.